I'm Patrick Bailey with whiteboardcoder.com. Today is July 21st, 2018, and in this video I'll be going over what type of Ethernet cable should you be installing in your house. Okay, first the very short answer, Cat5e. You should probably be using Cat5e in 90% of the cases, with rare exceptions. You may need to check with your local regulations on where you're routing it because you might need a Cat5e plenum flavor, which I'll go over what plenum means in a minute, but plenum is more fire resistant and different things like that, but I'm going to go over that in a minute. Now having said that, let me explain my own situation and then go into what Cat5e is, Cat6, Cat7, etc., etc., etc. So here's my own situation. Currently, I'm living in a townhouse, and I've partially routed it up with Cat5e. So I'm going to kind of finish that off and kind of route the rest of the house up here the next month or so with Cat5e. And that should be perfectly fine, and I should be perfectly future-proof for a lot of things for 10, 20 years. I don't really see a big problem with that, and I'll go over that more in detail in a minute. But also, my wife and I are planning on probably building a house the next few years, and we go build that house, the one we're looking at, we're probably planning on staying in there maybe the rest of our lives potentially. And even then, I think Cat5e would be okay. But I'm probably going to plan on putting Cat6A in that house. And I'm going to kind of go over all the differences and why. But for the most part, Cat5e is going to be cover your bases. But let me go over why I'm going to do that and why, etc., etc., and what every little thing means. But for the most part, if you're satisfied, Cat5e, go for it, you're done. But if you want some more information, keep watching. Okay, first let me go into plenum because that might be important in your situation. You can go to this website, cwelldirect.com, Learning Center Plenum Space, to see what is plenum and why should I care. And the short answer really is plenum is a different coding, and you can have a plenum Cat5e, a plenum Cat6, a plenum Cat6A. Plenum just is the rubber coating on the outside, and all that really is a rating. That means it burns, it's more fire retardant, and it also doesn't give off noxious fumes. And there's some important reasons why you should care about that. So with that, having said that, let's actually go out and burn some Cat5e and burn some plenum cable to see what the actual difference is. And also, in most cases, you probably don't need it if you're routing your house up. But if you're routing things through plenum spaces or you have local regulations that say you need plenum, go get plenum. It costs a lot more, but it is absolutely vital and legally needed in certain situations where you're routing things in plenum spaces. But with that, let's go burn some. Okay, first before I get to setting fires, I'm going to read this to hopefully explain what's going on. Now this is written by Trent Crawford, and I'll put a link to this somewhere if I can. It talks about plenum and why you want plenum and why you should care. So I'll just read this. When you run cable through any building, you first need to consider plenum spaces. Plenum spaces are the open spaces above the ceiling or below the floor that are used for air circulation. Technically, any ductwork is considered a plenum space too. These spaces are important for air circulation in any building, but they also bring some problems. If you ever have a fire, because of the high oxygen content and lack of fire barrier, using untreated cables in plenum spaces can spread the fire to other areas quickly and also spread noxious smoke throughout the building. Plenum cables are coated with flame retardants and made using special plastics that don't smoke nearly as much as the other plastics to help prevent this problem. Any cable that you run through plenum spaces must be plenum rated, even wiring using information transfers like Cat5 wiring. And I'll skip over this next paragraph, but plenum spaces provide two problems. If there is ever a fire, first, by necessity, plenum spaces are loaded with fresh oxygen. A small smoldering fire can really take off if it breaks into the plenum space. The second issue is that the air in the plenum space is forced through the whole building. Any smoke or fumes that get released into the plenum are pumped all over the rest of the building. So the two issues, I guess, when you're dealing with ductwork and you're in that area is since the air is flowing through, I wouldn't say there's a mass of oxygen. It's not like they pump oxygen in there purposely, but the idea is there's more air going through, so the fire will get fed through. And if you have Cat5 going everywhere, cable going everywhere, it leads everywhere in the house, and so the fire could spread quickly everywhere. And then also, I think the bigger issue is that it can make noxious fumes when it's burning. And so regular cables, if you burn them, will probably make more noxious fumes, and that will spread through the house quicker, and so a bad thing. So if you are running cables in these plenum spaces, you need plenum cable, which is typically, you don't need that for most houses, but if you're in these spaces, you do. So what I have here, and I haven't done this yet, well, I have burned some regular cable, so I have some regular cable here. So I was going to set some Cat5e cable on fire and a cluster of it just to see how quickly does it burn, and also what kind of noxious fumes can you see coming off of it. So let's just get that started. So here's Cat5e, and I'll just do a single one at first. And I did this earlier, and it catches fire. Oh, and you can see that black coming off there. You can see some black smoke. And there's some fuel there. You can see it bursting. But it quickly goes out. Now, if there's other things on fire, it could probably contribute, but it's not like it just goes up in flames with regular stuff. In fact, if I get a cluster of them here, let me get 3 of them going here, so maybe we can see that smoke a little better as I hurt myself. Let me get them a little tighter there. Just try to see if I can get that smoke a little more visible. See, here I got the lighter on the whole time. There it goes. So you can, oh yeah, you can see that black smoke there. So there's your noxious fumes. And so if you had a fire in your house, this would burn, and you'd see all these fumes coming off, but, you know, I turned the flame off. It's not like it's just going on fire, even with just regular cables, but there's those fumes coming off. So I did go on Amazon, and I bought a 10-foot strand of plenum cable. Happens to be Cat6. Let's see, where is... compliant, molded, contact, verified. Plenum. Oh. There it is. Sorry, let me show real close. So here it is, the cable. And you can see right there, plenum rated. So before I open this is plenum rated. So in theory, this shouldn't burn as well, and even when it does burn, it shouldn't give out as much gas. So I'm going to go burn a perfectly good cable here that I'm going to cut up, just to prove a point, and to show off, and to see how this all works. Okay. Cut off a big chunk here. So let's see how it goes. So plenum. I don't see any burst there. I would say that appears to be more fire retardant. You know, there's a little bit of smoke coming off there, but no, that, yeah. Okay. So there is a plenum cable. And it's not nearly putting off. It is definitely a lot less flammable. So there's the difference between plenum and non-plenum. It's just the fact that it's got this coating that makes it fire retardant, and it puts off less smoke, or less noxious smoke, I guess, as it goes. And you have to use it by regulation when you run it through plenum spaces. So plenum versus non-plenum. Okay, I made this little table to kind of show what the big differences are between Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6A, Cat7, Cat7A, and why you would care. Now, right now, if you go by Cat5e, the nice thing it'll do up to 1,000 megabits of speed. And it will do that speed up to 100 meters of distance. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, you should be fine like that. And then also, you do have options of shielding it. And what shielding will do, you can buy shielded Ethernet. I don't personally recommend it typically, but shielding will help protect it in certain environments. I mean, shielding is like a metal foil on it, and so it'll help protect the signal so you can get a better, faster signal further down the line. And for the most part, you probably don't need it. Now, right now, why would you want to do Cat5e versus everything else? So Cat5e does 1,000, and your typical computer you can go buy right now has a Ethernet cable that's capable of 1,000 megabits. And that's pretty typical for anything you buy. And also, a lot of the routers you can buy are typically now doing gigabit. This is 1,000 megabits. 1,000 megabits equals a gigabit. So it's pretty easy to go find things that are gigabit. However, once you go to the next level, and so you see here a Cat6A, 10,000 megabits, 10 gigabits. Well, actually 10,000 megabits, but we'll just say 10 gigabits. 10 gigabits, you can't easily go find that. It's out in the market. You can find some things, but it's a lot more expensive. So you're not going to really go find you're not going to go to Best Buy and find a router that has 10,000 megabits. It's just not going to happen right now. And although the speed is nice, 1,000 megabits is huge. I mean, right now, and also it matters down the line. So like my house is routed up. I have 1,000 megabits on my machines. I have a 1,000 megabit router. However, right now I think I'm paying for download speed, I think I'm paying for 40 megabit. So I'm paying for 40 megabit, but internally I'm capable of 1,000. Now I can, in a lot of areas nowadays, you can pay for 1,000, but on 40 megabits, that's a lot. We're all playing games, we're all watching videos. 40 megabits you can do a lot with. 1,000 megabits you can do a crazy amount with. Most of us don't need that kind of speed. Now I'm a geek, I'm a software engineer. I could use 1,000 megabits every so often when I'm uploading really gigantic files and moving things around, typically for work, not for fun things. Things that typically most people don't do. And even then 1,000 megabits, if I had that set up, is a lot of speed. It's a lot of speed going on. It'll probably be a lot of speed for the next 10 years, even more. And so most of us don't need that. And so Cat5e, yeah, of course, if Cat6 was the same price, of course you get it because you're future-proofing yourself a little bit. But this future, as far as a consumer level, that's probably 10, 15 years out, if not more. As far as actually having access to a faster internet, I don't know when that's going to come. But for the 5 or 10% of us who might be like me, 2, 3, 5 years out, I could use 10 gigabit internally in my house because I have servers talking to each other and moving files around. So I could see a need for that for myself, but I'm the rarity. But anyway, back onto the differences. So Cat5e, 1,000 megabit, more than fine enough for 10, 20 years in my opinion. And you can go 100 meters, 100 meter run per cable. Now Cat6, 10,000, 37 meters. So it can only go, it's much shorter. 37 meters is usually long enough for most people. But then again, it can do 100 megabit. It can do 1,000 megabit. It can do 100 meters. No problem. It can do that further distance for that. Cat6A, it can do the 10,000, but it can do it 100 meters. So you're buying that, it can go longer, and typically means longer. It can handle a signal better. And so typically it's just a better thing, Also, this is where I get a little confused on what's out there. I actually wrote this. No, that's wrong. Shielding on Cat6A is optional. Shielding can help it, and so I found some Cat6A unshielded, so it should meet the specs, but there are also ones that are shielded that meet the specs. So shielding makes life a little more complicated because you have to ground it. There's a little metal sheath in there, and so there's some other things you have to do. You have to get a box where you route them all to. That's a shielded box that grounds it all. So that's just more added headache. And I don't think you really need that for the most part. I'm going to try to avoid it myself if I go to Cat6A. Now, the next thing is Cat7. Cat7, it's not really around. Not really. You can buy some, but it's kind of in its infancy. And looking around, in theory, it can do 40,000 megabits, 40 gigabits, which is a ton. And it can do it over 50 meters, and it can do 10,000 over 100 meters. And then Cat7A, I don't see it around right now. So I think the information gets a little spotty on it, and I'm not an expert in this area. But it looks like it can do 40 to 100,000 over 50 meters. I don't know if it can do 40,000 over 100 meters. That's where I'm getting a little spotty. There's a lot of theories on this. And also it seems right now that Cat7 is by default double shielded because it needs that so that it can get those better speeds a longer distance. So that is the long and short of what the differences are. And of course, you would buy, if they were all the same price, you would buy a Cat7A because it future-proofs yourself for a long, long time. But there's the price. So, having said that, Cat5e, way to go. Cat6A, unshielded, I think is the next way to go if you're really looking forward 5 or 10 years and you want to go spend a lot of money to it right now or a few years from now to put in 10 gigabit network systems. That's a lot of money right now, but there's the details. Now let me go show the actual cable cost. So I just pulled up some information on different cables, and let me go 1,000-foot cable spools. Let me show you what the cost difference is right now in July 2018. Okay, so prices. So just to go over some quick prices, just looking up some things on the internet real quickly. I recently bought an unshielded 1,000 feet of Cat5e on Amazon, and here's the current price right now for what I actually bought, and it's $40 on Prime. Not bad, 1,000 feet. And you can see here's these twisted pairs, and they're not shielded in any special way. But it should get that 1,000 gigabit up to 100 meters, which is more than enough for the townhouse I'm in. More than enough for most houses you're in. I mean, 100 meters of routing is a long way to go. And we're talking houses, we're not talking, office buildings. You may have different issues there. Now, looking over here, I started looking at cable wholesale, just because they have more details and different information on here. They charge a little bit more for the same Cat5e, $84, but still, that's the same cat, unshielded, twisted pair, Cat5e. Now going to the next level, Cat6. So here is Cat6, and if you look at Cat6, it's twisted pair again, but you'll see there's this little centerpiece. And if you actually look in detail on that, these actually go around this centerpiece. They're kind of separated out. So these cables are actually a little bit fatter, which is an important thing to take note. So if you're running 8 of them together, it's going to be a bigger chunk than just running 8 Cat5e together. You need more space. And they do that so they can get they're not doing the crosstalk signal. They're not as close to each other. So it helps to get those faster speeds. And again, Cat6 gets up to 10,000 over 37 meters. And here it is, $103 for a spool of 1,000 feet. Let's see, another one. So here's Cat6A, unshielded. So you can see it looks the same, unshielded, nothing special going on here, but it's rated as Cat6A, so it can do that 10,000 over 100 meters, $227. So now we've bumped the price up. So for my view right now, Cat5e, $40-50. Cat6A, which is where I would unshielded, which is probably where I'm going to go to in the next house, $227. We've gone from 50 to almost $250, almost a 5-fold increase. So you better really want that. And I think I do in the next house, but I don't here. Then we have Cat6A shielded, and you can see here's this shield. This is there's a couple different kinds of shielding. This UTF, ST, but you can see the shielding here just sheaths the whole thing. There's only one shield and it sheaths the whole thing. And again, here it is, $288. Now, in theory, this shielding will be better. I would argue that the shielding of Cat6A is better than an unshielded Cat6A, but not enough for me to bother with the shielding for what my purposes. Now, next, let's see, we have a plenum. Oh, I just wanted to point that out. Here's a Cat6A plenum. So all these have plenum versions, and you can see how much the price jumps. It goes from, here's an unshielded Cat6A plenum. I go from like $220 to $556 for 1,000 feet. So plenum cost a lot. So if you don't need plenum, don't buy plenum. It's not worth it unless you need it, because it is a fire safety regulation. Now, when it comes to Cat7 or 7A, I really can't find a Cat7. And on this, or 7A, but on this cable wholesale website, which seems to know what they're doing, they don't have a Cat7, which tells me a Cat7 is still in its infancy. I did stroll around and I did find a Cat7 here over at Primus Cable for $618. And what you can see here is it's double shielded. So it has that shielding around the whole thing, and then it actually shields every individual twisted pair. So there's 4 there. And so chances are this is probably even a thicker cable. So there's the big difference between them all. Is the price, and also you're going to get some more thickness in these two. So for my money, right now, Cat5e is the way to go. It's cheap enough, it's good enough, and it's future-proof enough that you're good. You're good 10, 20 years in my opinion. For the geeks who are out there who probably are going to run their own network and like the idea of having either are going to do 10 gigabit internally on their network or plan to do 10 gigabit on an internal network in the next 5 years, yeah, I'd probably do Cat6A. So there's my spiel on what you should probably be installing in your house right now. For most of us, Cat5e. Go install Cat5e, and you may or may not have to do plenum if that's what your local regulation requires. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give it a like. To subscribe, just click the subscribe button. Also, you can follow me on Twitter under the handle @whiteboardcoder.com. View any code I may have thrown up as a gist at GitHub under the username PatmanDenver, or check out my blog site at whiteboardcoder.com.